I still remember my first Comic-Con back in 2011. It was small that year, easy to navigate, not many celebrity guests. Stan Lee was the guest of honor that year, and his panel was free to all attendees. I don't remember waiting in line to hear him speak at all, but I did take notes and declared my first Comic-Con a triumph. I returned the following 2 years, but by 2014, the con had grown substantially, and I became overwhelmed by the crowds. Also, my self-confidence plummeted that year due to lots of things. I lost the courage to ask cosplayers if I could photograph them. I felt so miserable that year that I thought perhaps it should be my last con ever, and in 2015, I stayed home. But I got better and came back last year and this year because I wanted to take pictures of the people, and to be honest, I don't really fit in. I mean, before my first Comic-Con, I was already kind of a fan of Star Trek: The Next Generation, Star Wars, and the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Since my first Comic-Con, I've started to enjoy more shows like Doctor Who, Torchwood, Sherlock, Arrow, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Jessica Jones, Daredevil, Luke Cage, Doctor Strange, The Librarians, and Stranger Things. But embracing TV versions of superheroes, many of which have been part of the comic book world for decades, doesn't necessarily mean I can relate to the hardcore fans who come to Comic-Con year after year, spend hundreds of dollars on autographs and photo ops with the actors who play their favorite characters, and devote a year or more to assembling a costume they can wear as a tribute to their fictional heroes. So I wander the halls with my camera, observing, striking up conversations, listening, and trying to understand this subculture for the 6th time. I should know by now, right? I should be able to blend in, to morph into one of them at any given moment. Only that never happens. I tell people I love their cosplay, and I know it comes from the heart, whether I fully understand their character or not. And I think they can sense that I'm genuine. At least they don't quiz me. Just one quick snapshot, and I'm on my merry way. I'm not always in the mood to ask people for photos, nor do I always want to. People are beautiful when they're posing, but to me, they're even more beautiful when they're just being human. My favorite images are cosplayers checking their phones or taking a break and reading a book. However, photographers are discouraged from capturing them in those vulnerable human moments. It's not fair, but I get it. I thought a lot about the Hall of Heroes while I was there. This was the room where the actors sat at booths and signed autographs, usually for a fee between $40 and $75, depending on the popularity of the actor. Then, if you wanted to have your picture taken with your favorite actor, you'd have to fork out a little more, usually something in the triple digits. I thought it was a little much, but nevertheless, people were willing to pay for it. When Dick Van Dyke showed up this year, fans came in troves to have their picture taken with him. I remember one in particular had dressed as the character Bert from Mary Poppins. The way he dressed in the scene where they all jump into the chalk drawing, you remember, right? He was beaming with joy as he showed me his picture with Dick Van Dyke. To him, this legendary actor truly was a hero, and it was a tremendous honor for him to be able to meet him face to face. I didn't fully understand, but his happiness was still really contagious. The authors were downstairs. They had a banner over their general area, but the banner didn't say heroes, nor did they have enormous lines of fans just waiting to shake their hands. Well, I suppose a few did, but nothing compared to the hordes of devoted fans the actors seemed to garner. I spoke with a few of the authors Friday night at an event called Drinks with Authors and Creators. They were all successful, traditionally published writers who wrote mostly in the science fiction and fantasy genres. Only I wouldn't have known who they were and have been for the name tags they wore. And when they talked about their books, I had to admit I'd never heard of them either. That was by no means reflection on how talented or not talented they were. I just haven't read much fiction at all in the past few years, really. I suppose it's because I don't write fiction. Maybe someday I'll give it a try, but memoirs and personal essays are usually my thing. I came all 4 days. I took the light rail from the furthest stop in Mesa to downtown Phoenix, each time to save on parking. I wasn't the only one to have this brilliant idea. Each day I was joined by people wearing Comic-Con badges, some even wearing cosplay on the train. It was a long commute, but totally worth it. Once again, I wish I had a picture to share with you, especially of the cosplayers on the train. It was so cool. The overall mood when I arrived at Comic-Con on Thursday was playful and lively as expected. Characters arrived with prop weapons, lightsabers, and such. There was even room set aside for fake fighting if anyone felt so inclined. But then a man was apprehended trying to smuggle in real guns and knives, and suddenly play fighting was stripped from the premises. For the first time in the history of Phoenix Comicon, prop weapons were banned, and when I returned the next day, there was noticeable tension in the air, and the crowd seemed smaller than anticipated. Villains became rarer. Jedi Knights became rarer too. Some likely requested refunds, as was their right. And it all makes me wonder if it was worth it. No one was physically hurt, thank God. Yet, after all these years, is it really necessary to punish the innocent like this? Does San Diego Comic-Con impose a prop weapon ban as well? I don't know. And I also don't know if I'll ever go back. I don't really feel like I have a purpose there anymore. But whether or not I return doesn't really matter in the end. I've learned much from my time at Comic-Con, and I have no regrets. And I hope it continues with or without me.